This is a rare Ethiopian Orthodox Bible manuscript.
The truth that shakes the foundations of what we've been taught. A truth that leads us back, not to Europe, not to the halls of Rome, but to Africa, to Ethiopia.
For nearly 2,000 years, one version of the story has shaped what billions believe. Jesus rises from the dead. He appears to his followers, and then he ascends to heaven. That's where the story ends. But what if it didn't?
They saw Jesus resurrected. Like, there's something different that goes on there. That they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
What if the most important part of the story happened after the resurrection and was never fully revealed? High in the mountains of Ethiopia, there exists a version of the Bible unlike any other. Older, larger, and filled with writings most of the world has never read. At the center of these writings are teachings attributed to Jesus during the 40 days after his resurrection, teachings that feel strangely relevant even today. This isn't about conspiracy. It's about texts that have been preserved for centuries, almost untouched. So the real question is simple. What was said during those final 40 days? The Bible the world rarely talks about. Most people think of the Bible as a single, fixed book. But historically, that's not the full picture. Different Christian traditions preserve different collections of texts. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, for example, holds one of the oldest and most extensive biblical canons still in use, containing 81 books. By comparison, the Protestant Bible contains 66. That difference, 15 additional books, has raised questions for generations. How did those differences happen? In the 4th century, missionaries traveling from regions like Syria reached the Kingdom of Axum, modern-day Ethiopia. They brought with them a wide range of religious writings circulating in early Christianity. Over time, many of those writings disappeared elsewhere, some excluded during canon debates, others simply lost. But Ethiopia was different, geographically isolated, culturally independent. While major religious centers debated, edited, and refined doctrine, Ethiopia preserved what it received. For centuries, those texts remained intact, while much of the world moved on without them. What Jesus said after the resurrection. Among the writings preserved is a text often referred to as the Book of the Covenant. It presents teachings attributed to Jesus during the 40 days between his resurrection and ascension, a period briefly mentioned but rarely explored in detail. In these accounts, the tone is striking. Jesus speaks with authority, not only as a teacher, but as a ruler over heaven and earth. He emphasizes that true faith is not about outward display, but about what happens inside a person. According to these texts, he instructs his followers to build God's kingdom, not through power, not through force, but through spiritual transformation. Then comes a warning, a prediction that his message would be misunderstood over time, that his name would be spoken widely, but not always sincerely followed, that people would build impressive structures, create visible systems of belief, yet lose sight of something far more important, the inner life, the human soul. It's a contrast that feels familiar, and then the message becomes even more direct. These writings describe a future where conflicts are carried out in the name of belief, where truth becomes harder to recognize, and where noise replaces sincerity. One line captures it clearly: "Blessed are those who endure in silence, not those who are seen, not those who are loud, but those who remain grounded, even when no one is watching." The visions that few people read. The Ethiopian tradition also preserves texts that go beyond standard biblical narratives. One of them is known as the Apocalypse of Peter. In it, Jesus reveals two contrasting visions, one of restoration and one of consequences tied to human actions. The imagery is intense, symbolic, and deeply detailed. Rather than presenting a simple divide between good and evil, it connects behavior with outcome, suggesting that actions carry weight far beyond the present moment. Some interpret it as a literal warning. Others see it as symbolic storytelling meant to provoke reflection. Either way, the message is difficult to ignore. Choices matter, and their impact may reach further than we expect. A different way of understanding faith. Another idea appears again and again in these writings: the idea that truth doesn't always come from positions of authority. Instead, it may emerge from unexpected places, from remote regions, overlooked communities, or individuals without influence. It challenges a common assumption that authority automatically equals understanding. According to these texts, deeper insight often comes from humility, not status. They also describe a different kind of spiritual practice, not one based only on words or rituals, but one that involves the whole person. A kind of alignment between thought, action, and intention. Something internal, rather than performative. Why these texts took a different path? Historically, the formation of biblical canons involved complex decisions. Different communities chose which texts to include based on consistency, interpretation, and practicality. Some writings, especially those that were highly symbolic or difficult to interpret, became less widely used. Others may have encouraged a more direct, personal approach to spirituality, which didn't always align with structured systems. Over time, certain texts were set aside in some traditions, while others, like those in Ethiopia, continued to preserve them. Not necessarily because one was right and another wrong, but because different paths were taken. Teachings about life, awareness, and reality. Some Ethiopian writings explore ideas that go beyond traditional doctrine. They describe the body as temporary, while the spirit continues beyond physical life. They emphasize awareness, purpose, and the importance of interconnection. One idea stands out: that a person can appear alive externally, but feel empty internally. A kind of disconnection, where life continues physically, but something deeper is missing. The teachings encourage reflection. What does it actually mean to be fully alive? Some texts also describe reality in symbolic terms, a mixture of light and shadow, clarity and confusion. Rather than literal interpretation, many see this as a philosophical way of describing human experience, a world where truth and illusion coexist, and awareness determines what we see. In this framework, the role of Jesus is not just to guide, but to awaken. Why Ethiopia preserved what others didn't. Ethiopia's history helps explain everything. It is one of the oldest continuous civilizations on Earth. Unlike many other regions, it maintained independence for most of its history. While empires expanded, collapsed, and reshaped cultures, Ethiopia preserved its traditions. Christianity has been present there since at least the 4th century, and over time it developed without the same external pressures that influenced other regions. Its use of Ge'ez, an ancient liturgical language, also limited outside access to these texts, which meant that what was preserved stayed preserved. The question that still remains: so where does this leave us? These writings exist. They've existed for centuries, and they present a perspective that many people have never encountered before. But interpretation is not simple. Are these teachings literal, symbolic, historical variations? There's no single answer everyone agrees on, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the real value lies in the questions they raise, about belief, about history, about what might still be waiting beyond what we already know.